Disaster. Okay, we are on. Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. We just had some technical issues, but at the end, we hope we can start. And today we have the pleasure to host Paola Imperatore to talk about the connections between the class struggles and the environmental strikes. And she will also introduce us to a concrete case near Florence here from the Ex-GKN farm, and an example of self-organization from workers. And I think and I was very happy when Paola accepted, because it's a very concrete example of doing ecological economics. So connecting the defense and protection and the definition of alternatives for more sustainable energy and production, together with the need of social justice. And I mean, in ecological economics, we are used to speak about energy because of thermodynamics, but also about different languages and different values, and most of all, the need to protect also the worker rights. So I leave the floor to Paola, and then we can have a discussion.
Okay, thank you, Tiziano. I try to share my PowerPoint. Okay, can you see my presentation? Okay, I will start. And first of all, thank you, Tiziano. Thank you to the Ecological Economics team for giving space to my research, conducted in dialogue with many other researchers, and above all, for giving space to the case of Ex-GKN in Florence, in Italy, which I believe can provide important insight for all of us who deal with economy and ecology from different perspectives. Today, I would like to talk about the case of Ex-GKN, starting from a specific angulation, specific perspective, namely the perspective of the climate crisis and the link between global warming, class, and labor, and then arriving at the experience of the ecological transition from below proposed by the Ex-GKN workers to understand how this proposal represents a paradigm shift and a concrete solution for building just transition. The premise for beginning this reflection required defining the nature of the problem of the climate crisis and the solution that have been given over the time. First of all, the climate crisis has been identified in the hegemonic narrative as an emergency, that is, a sudden and unpredictable phenomenon, as an expression of the current anthropocentric era in which the humanity as a whole has become a geological force capable of altering the chemical, physical, and biological processes of the earth, and lastly, as a democratic challenge because it sees us all in the same boat. Second one, the climate crisis was approached by government, companies, and international forum, first and foremost by the Conference of the Parties, as a problem whose solution could be delegated to the market. Hence, the decision to rely on market mechanism, which we know as the emission trading system, to put a price on greenhouse gas emission in order to contain or reduce the level of climate changing emission. But what are the reality we are facing? And is this reality in line with the narratives? I think no, for different reasons. First of all, because talking about an emergency is misleading. The climate crisis is an urgency that require immediate and long-term action, but it is not a sudden emergency, but rather it is the result of specific policies, of specific choice, of specific ideology that have led to planetary degradation from all point of view. And looking at the climate crisis as the outcome of a slow process which began with industrialization and accelerated with the neoliberal policies of the last 30 years, help us to identify potential space for intervention, for change, and give us the opportunity to reverse this trajectory. Secondly, the state intuition to govern the climate crisis through market instrument has proved to be a total failure, as demonstrated by the fact that since 1997 Kyoto Protocol establishing the carbon credit market to date, the emissions have not only been reduced or contained, but have grown exponentially. In the recent year, the emergence of a climate mobilization cycle with Friday for Future, Extinction Rebellion, and other movements has also highlighted the socio-political limit of using concepts such as the Anthropocene 1. Let me clarify. This is not to question the value of the concept from a scientific point of view, but rather to analyze its socio-political implication. And in fact, the climate crisis surely concerns all humanity, but with level of responsibility and level of exposure to the climate risk that are very different and that directly call into question the issue of justice and injustice. And this is because the climate crisis cannot be understood without considering at least two structural causes of the phenomenon that are related with two structural inequality. The one between the global north and the global south, which historically has led to an unequal ecological exchange in which the north has contracted an ecological debt with the south, and which today is reproduced through plural different forms of colonialism, such as, for example, the green colonialism linked to the extraction of critical materials and minerals that generate new asymmetries between countries. This has led us to read the climate crisis, for example, by looking at the level of absolute emission depending by the state or per capita emission depending by the style of life of the citizen of the different country produced at the global level. This reading of the climate crisis is, of course, necessary, but not exhaustive, because it leaves out the second structural cause of the climate crisis, namely the class dimension, which cut across all countries. Indeed, as the data collected by the Oxfam, but also by other actors, have shown, the impact of people's lifestyle on climate are correlated with their socioeconomic status. The richest 1% of the planet emit twice as much in absolute terms as the poorest 50%. And this difference is even wider in terms of per capita impact. Again, Oxfam, in a report entitled Carbon Billionaire, the Investment Emission of the World's Richest People, highlighted an important point, that the richest 1% of the planet not only bears the greatest responsibility for the emission produced by their lifestyle and their everyday consumption, but it is also the 1% that holds the power to decide what is produced at global level. And here, the responsibility is therefore twofold. And while I, as a person, as an individual, can only make adjustment on my lifestyle, my consumption, those people, the richest people of the world, could bring about more structural change in economy and in climate regulation. And finally, when we talk about justice and climate, we need to ask, are we really all in the same boat? And although the climate crisis seems to democratize risk, the extreme climate event and many existing studies, analysis, reports have shown that the climate crisis falls most heavily on those who are already oppressed or discriminated on the basis of class, gender, provenience, race, or age. And this is because this group are structurally more vulnerable and structurally with less tool, less means to protect themselves from extreme climate event. And for this reason, I think that it is more appropriate to talk of the climate crisis as a phenomenon that put us all in the same storm, but with very different tools and means to deal with it. Moving on the relationship, more specifically on the relationship between the climate crisis and labor, today we look at two main aspects concerning the impact of global warming on workers. First of all, there is a health impact related to the extreme climate condition to which the workers are systematically exposed. And this health impact is nowadays certified by the increase in death, illness, and accident related to the climate stress. And this is a main point to address. Second one, there is a social impact. In fact, the environmental policies that have been implemented in this year have not taken into account the protection of the workers and of the poorest people in the society. And this conducts to fiscal policies that do not respect the principle shared at European level that the polluters have to pay. As occurred in the case of the carbon tax in France, and this kind of policy conduct, or for example, to an acceleration in delocalization processes, as occurred in the GKN case, or in other cases in which companies choose to close their plants, their factories, with the justification of the ecological transition, just to reopen the same production, the same plant, in countries with lower environmental and social standards. So this top-down approach to the climate policies has conducted to a massive layoff with no environmental benefit, conducing many countries, as Western countries, to a process of noxiousness deindustrialization, as named by Lorenzo Feltrin, in which the ecological degradation and the noxiousness continue to be produced, but we lose occupation and jobs. In this context, where the tension between environmental and labor is exacerbated by the climate crisis, the collective mobilization have opened up a space for dialogue and alliance between climate and social demands. This has produced alliance in various European countries, where more radical trade unions or worker organizations and environmental movements start to cooperate in specific campaign, for example, on the cost of energy and fossil fuel, such as in the case of Just Stop Oil in UK, or on green mobility, as occurred in Germany, or on other topic and campaigns, such as the campaign for the creation of climate jobs. And with the slogan, "End of the world, end of the month, same struggle," a new space was opened to address the climate crisis with a social paradigm, namely the climate justice paradigm that tried to combine the social justice dimension with the climate and environmental policies. The most advanced tip of this relationship, of this laboratory of alliance between ecology and labor, is represented by the case of Ex-GKN in Italy. What is GKN? GKN is a British automotive multinational, which in 2018 acquired the Campi Bisenzio plant near to Florence, where axle shaft for cars were produced, and which formerly belonged to the Fiat, that was the most important automotive industry in the history of Italy. In July 2021, the plant was suddenly closed with an email, and more than 400 people were dismissed. But the workers, with a strong union culture and a tradition of self-organization, so much so that they had a collective of workers named Factory Collective that worked alongside the trade union, immediately managed to give a political response to the dismissal by deciding to go back into the factory, into the plant, and give life to a permanent assembly, which is still active today, and that include not just workers, but many people coming from the territory, from the university, and other social organization. From the earliest day, the company, but also the press, try to associate the layoff with the ecological transition, thus trying to present the climate demand as inherently antisocial. And one of the main economic journal of country of Italy will title its own article with this word: "The banality of the ecological transition in the automotive industry, the layoff." And then the article does go on by talking about a Greta Thunberg effect to which all the social problems should be blamed. But what happens, however, is that the workers of GKN, instead of following this narrative and opposing the ecologists, choose to criticize not the ecological transition, but this ecological transition, namely the transition of the market, the top-down transition that does not consider the people, the worker, the social instance. One of the most active workers in the Factory Collective says clearly that the energy transition is not the cause of the layoff, and that the transition to the electric vehicle is probably a fake transition, which does not conduct our society to a better world, but rather conduct our society to lost jobs for a worse world from all points of view, both social and environmental terms. Then he makes a parallel with the miners in England during the Thatcher government, when, as he say, the miners were beaten, but the world is not greener because the coal has just been moved somewhere else. And this paradigm is now nowadays reproduced also with the transition, the automotive, in which the exploitation, the natural exploitation, is just moved in other country by following a colonial logic and logic. Based on this premise, the factory collective chose to ally itself with the climate movement and challenge the transition from above by promoting the ecological reconversion of the factory from below. So they, in all this time, they try to combine in any moment the protest and the proposal, the mobilization and the construction of alternatives. On the side of mobilization, the most promising alliance was, and currently is, that which Friday for Future, with which the workers launched in 2022 a 2 days mobilization framed, linked by the urgency of a climate and social transition. In their appeal, they wrote that the mobilization of 25-26 March are explicitly linked in the spirit, in the program, and in the preparation by the common point of the ecological and labor transition. And they wrote that they reject to permit, to allow the climate crisis to be used as an excuse to justify relocation, layoff, and precariousness. And at the same time, they reject a deviation in ecological and climate transition justified with the defense of jobs. So this point and that word define in a clear way the perspective with which these collective of workers face this struggle and this relation with ecologist Galassia and in general with the ecological transition. But moving on the side of the ecological transition, the collective workers, the workers collective choose to operate, to work on 2 reindustrialization plans. I will start with the first plan, drafted in 2022, which aimed to build a sustainable public mobility hub. I won't go into too much detail about the plan, also because I haven't the skills, but I would like to emphasize a few aspects that mark a paradigm shift toward climate justice. This plan was based on the choice to move away from the private mobility paradigm and toward a public system of mobility, which is central for any attempt of ecological reconversion. And this perspective is proposed by the workers in criticism with the transition to the electric auto, as the latter poses many problems related to the extraction of the critical materials, and we back to the green extractivism mentioned earlier, pose the problem of the high waste production due to the replacement of an entire car fleet, and finally pose the problem of the pollution related to the private car use. But further, and I find this point very important, this project was framed since the origin as an opportunity of transition for the entire Italian automotive sector that was 2 years ago and continue to be in crisis, and generally for the entire European automotive sector that nowadays with the Rearm Europe program risks to be converted to military production. This plan never got started because the institutional will to support this massive reconversion was lacking. And this is why in the last years, the workers, together with a large network of supportive academics and experts, drew up a new project whose business plan was presented in October 2024. The second plan focuses on the production of solar panels, with the attempt to produce solar panel without use critical minerals, with the aim to obviously produce renewable energy and support the development of a network of energy communities. But this project also considered the opportunity to produce cargo bikes in order to contribute to the initial idea to move toward a sustainable mobility by improving safety and the health of other workers as the riders that every day use bikes to move and to work. This second option, this second plan, is more feasible, is a most feasible reconversion plan, reflecting in any case the idea of a factory socially integrated with the territory. That is, a factory capable of providing a services to all the community, to all the territory in which the factory is, and not to damaging it with the production. Because this is, in this element, we find the origin of the labor environment conflict. And additionally, in a time featured by energy inflection, also by energy inflection, the idea connected with this plan consider the opportunity to produce energy to support a democratic and social approach to energy. And I move to the last slide, the last point that concern how implement this bottom-up ecological transition. To implement, to concretize this plan, this ecological transition from below, the workers have worked in different ways. First of all, they founded a workers' cooperative named in an evocative way GFF, GKN For Future, to manage in a collective and cooperativistic way this reconversion, this industrial reconversion. Second one, they presented a business plan that I already mentioned before. Thirdly, they decide to create a campaign for collect economic resources to initiate reindustrialization through a popular and nowadays successful shareholding in collaboration with other organizations as ethical banks, cultural associations, and climate movement. And nowadays, their next target is 2 million euros. Finally, in December 2024, they obtained also the approval of a regional law for the creation of a public industrial consortium for public support of the transition project that could give the opportunity to this plan to be concretized. But moving to my conclusion for the moment, I find that there are some remarkable aspects in this case that can help us to reflect about the potential trajectory of ecological transition, that can give us inspiration for our study, for our approach, for our approach to the economy, to the ecology, to our territory as also citizen and inhabitant of the world. In particular, I find that what is remarkable in this case does not concern just the kind of transition plan, namely if the transition plan concerns the energy, the mobility, or other sector or production trajectory, but the method of the ecological transition that the work suggests. And this bottom-up ecological transition, in my opinion, involves two key dimensions on which reflect, that are, first of all, the subject of the transition, the subject of the climate policies. This point open a discussion about who have to decide for production, who have to decide to participate, to have voice in the ecological transition governance. And I think that this is a crucial point that gives us the opportunity to move toward a democratization of the climate governance and ecological transition. Second one, and I go to conclude, there is the question of the object of the ecological transition. And these 2 points are interrelated. When are the workers or the community to decide what to produce, it is more probable that the production will reflect collective needs, will reflect and respond to real needs rather than profit and artificial need. And I think that when are the workers, the community, the inhabitants that decide what to produce, it is more probable that this production will protect rather than damage the environment in which the same people are embedded. So I think that from this point of view, this case leave us with some insight on which everyone can try inspiration. And I thank you for your attention, your time, and I close my presentation.
Okay, sorry. Thanks a lot, Paola, for your very interesting speech, and also for introducing us, to the public, the case of ex-GKN worker self-organization. That was very clear, also in the stages, and also to have underlined a couple of points, and for which I also ask you some further comments if you want. The first one, the point that any kind of transition actually requires a kind of, let's say, struggle, at least, rights do not come from the top, but we have to fight for the rights. And so the concept of justice is already debated, so what is just for one group or for some kind of people is not just for others. So there is this inner contrast now among different values. And for instance, historically, at least in Italy, we experienced several divisions between environmentalists and unions. So if you have any insights on the connection between unions and environmentalists, so maybe it seems that they are converging, at least maybe partially. And also another interesting point was related to the democracy, the issue of the point, how we can say that, how the democracy has a general, let's say, institution for public decisions should be linked to the democratization also of the production process, because of course, if you have a high concentration of production power, wealth, income, and so on. So of course, in concrete terms, material terms, the democracy is weak, at least. So if you have other comments on these points.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tiziano. First of all, I agree with your last point about the relation between democracy and power concentration. That is a crucial topic that nowadays is emerging in a very dramatic way. So I think that the challenge for a democratization of economic paradigm and economic decision is one of the pillars for a democratic society. But moving on the first point about the connection and the historic relationship between work and labor, work and ecology, I will try to answer to your point by focusing on the Italian context, just because I better know this context. Here, as in many other countries, we know that we face every day with conflict or impasse related to the conflict between labor and ecology, as one of the most famous cases, not just in Italy, but all over the world, is the Ilva of Taranto case. So this is a point very, very very complex point to face, but at the same time, in the last year, we are recover the heritage of the struggle during the 16th and the 17th of the workers for safety and health and environment protection in the factory. We nowadays know this phase of struggle with the name of working class ecologism. And with this concept, we refer to the struggle that in a phase of expansion of workers' rights and workers' struggle posed also important struggle on the dimension of health and environment within the factory and out of the factory. One of the main points of this struggle, or the struggle in the past, was the capacity of the workers of the trade unions to work for a paradigm shift from a rooted paradigm that was the paradigm of monetization of the risk, a paradigm based on the idea that the workers can be exposed to the climate and environmental risk, but they have to be paid for this risk, to a new paradigm based on the idea that the health cannot be sold. And this cultural and social shift conducted also to a new phase of struggle and alliance between different worlds. Probably this was the most advanced alliance in the history of labor and ecology relation in the history of Italy, but I don't think just in Italy. At the same time, the 18th, the 19th, the arrival of globalization and neoliberalist policies conduct to a disgregation of the working class, to a new phase of precarization of work, but also to an acceleration of global ecological and climate crisis that conducted, as I mentioned before, to a noxious deindustrialization in which we lost industry, we lost jobs, but we are not able to gain in terms of environmental protection and health protection. Obviously, the climate crisis arrive in this context in which there are previous conflict, previous tension, and intensify all this tension. But I think that, as I mentioned before, in the last year, the collective action coming from the social movement has proved to be able to open new space of dialogue and potential alliance between these two worlds. And I think that this can be a first step useful to democratize economy, because to democratize economy, to have a collectivity able to decide what to produce, we have, first of all, to create this community, to create this collectivity, to create this society. And where the society is fragmented, is divided, it's very difficult democratize economy, democratize society. So I think that this first point is also a step toward climate justice. And so I think that this is a point on which continue to make analysis, to make study.
Okay, thanks again, Paola. Since you brought about the one idea that is very relevant on ecological economics in general, that is the monetary reductionism. So the idea that the only way to face a problem is to translate into cost-benefit analysis and to translate any issue in monetary issue. And of course is even logically weak, but also more ethically, not necessarily good. So the point, of course, there are some issues like health, for instance, that cannot be traded because at the end, monetary is a way to transmit the value of trade that is better or higher than any other value. And just coming back to the another question, if you could explain with a bit more details how the fundraising from the GKN, so the capital is constituted and what is, peculiar in this case, and also if you have any thought about or if in the GKN case what is the discussion with respect to the international context? So, for instance, the tariffs imposed by Trump, or how the global and the regional market is changing also with respect to the ecological transition that seems now less, topic trend than war, unfortunately. So also if there is any discussion within the, sorry. We have also another, question from the audience, but I cannot read it. Let me. Okay. Sorry, I have another question from the audience. I'll be curious to ask, how was the climate crisis used as an excuse by GKN to close the Campi Bisenzio factory? What was the argument they put forward? So also another questions from the audience is if the climate and how the climate crisis was used by the owners to, just to move the production as well.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I will try to put in dialogue with all those points. I try, first of all, to answer the question about the fundraising and how it is working. Mainly, the workers choose to create this popular shareholder with the idea that everyone can become a member of this cooperative. So people can choose to subscribe a quota, I think is the correct terms, a quota, and support this project. Nowadays, there's fundraising is not sufficient to start reindustrialization, but is an element, a dimension that can help workers to negotiate with regional institution, with local institution, and to ask them to make an intervention and support this project. So this campaign, fundraising campaign, is a twofold goal. On one hand, collect money because they need money, but also have money to give credibility to this project and start to negotiate. So this is briefly the description of this campaign. The second point, very, very complex. So we are moved towards a direction that are very, how to say, dramatic, in the sense that one hand Trump move toward protectionist policies, but at the same time he leaves the Paris Agreement on climate change. He's try to how to say, intervene in a diplomatic way in Russia-Ukraine situation, but at the same time he called to all NATO country to increase their budget for the defense, for the militarization. So we move in a very chaotic situation, and I think it's not easy to give a framework that is coherent about what we are experiencing every day. I think that the solution can just come from below, because in any case, the interest of Trump or of a national company is not the same interest of a worker of the same country. And this is the reason for which I before put attention on the class dimension, because we cannot face the climate crisis and the job protection in terms of nation, from my point of view, in terms of nation, but in terms of social justice. And when we define this and we find accordance on this, we also identify different policies and field of intervention. So this is just my very chaotic point of view about this chaotic situation. And finally, for probably I forgot the question. Tiziano, can I ask you if you can repeat me the last question?
Yes, I'm checking one second.
Yeah.
There was one from the audience. How the owners of GKN, if and how the owners use the climate
Okay.
crisis
Yeah.
justification or motivation.
As I mentioned before, the owners of the GKN try to use ecological transition and so the climate crisis as the cause of this plant closure. But to be honest, they doesn't deal in particular with this problem, in the sense that the transnational capital nowadays face the problem in this way: leave the plant and leave the problem to the state. So bye, and the company does not deal seriously with this point. But what we know is that this company continue to produce exactly the same things, the same production in other country, where the social and environmental costs are competitive for the companies, but not for the people, obviously. And so this is a crucial point. The very dramatic point is that nowadays the extreme right, the Danielist political actors and the company that have destroyed the planet try to use ecology instance against the workers, just to divide the people, just to exacerbate this tension and this difficulty between people. And this represents a point that need to be deeply addressed from all perspectives, from the perspective of ecological economics, from the perspective of media communication, sociology, and from every point of view, I think.
Okay, thanks a lot, Paola, for inspiring us with a lot of points. And I don't know if there are, okay, we have some 10 minutes left if we want to go ahead. And another possible point of discussion, if you want to say something else, regards not the issue of scales, in a sense of at what scale we should intervene. You remarked several times the need of bottom-up, let's say, initiatives. Although one of the possible, let's say, critique or point of concern is like how to scale up bottom-up initiatives in order to make them effective in order, to curb emissions or, to change the production the way of production or to get macroeconomic, let's say, targets. From my point of view, it's a part of the story, but of course, since we are living in complex systems, we have to act on different scales. So it's not necessarily, I think, to act only at the global scale to solve global issues, since they are interconnected. But your points or your thoughts on this could be interesting.
I agree with your perspective on the point of scalarity and on the relevance of combining different scale of intervention, because different fields, different policies, different contexts require different scale of intervention. So I think that we can image this dimension, this scale as combined. But obviously the point of the scalarity of this bottom-up experience and experiment, I think represent one of the main limit of this experience. The first plan that the workers proposed was very relevant also because it directly address the question of scalarity, because they propose to invest at national level on a model of green and public mobility that could save the automotive sector at minimum at national level in a social and environmental way. And I think that in that project there was the ability to combine in the better way the bottom-up centrality of workers and territory with the national intervention, funding, and regulation. This plan, as I already say, was not started. And so we find in this moment with another kind of project that, yes, it could be replicable, because I don't think everyone, but in different contexts, we can try to image production of renewable energy or cargo bikes, but not in every case, we have the condition, the social condition to create this alternative. So this is a crucial point, that of scalarity, and this is a crucial point in particular if we think that nowadays the conference of the parties are not able to address the point of climate change. The last conference of party were very, very problematic from different point of view, and we need to monitor and to make pressure on this appointment, because we have to face the global change from a global perspective. We cannot think to face this problem at a local scale, but this lack of political response on climate change in the COP represent a challenge that with which we have to deal from below, because just people, just social organization can make this pressure on government. I don't know who can make this pressure. I don't know who have the interest for a change in climate policies. So those levels are in a conflictual dialectic on which we have to spend more reflection.
Okay. Thanks again, Paula. I think we are, closing now the session, since we are, the time is almost over. Although, maybe we should need 2-3 hours more to go more in depth on all these points that we touched today. And so I thank again Paula to introduce us this real application of post-normal science, so going beyond academia and also actually collaboration between academia and workers. So, since the webinar is on doing ecological economics, I think that the case of GKN is very practical in this sense, in every sense actually, and also in the it teaches us also how difficult it is to change. To do a just transition. It's not just a matter of words or laws. Okay, so I think that we learned a lot of stuff, and I thank Paula again, and also Roldan, who was behind this and the stage, and who helped us a lot with all the technical issues, and also in the recording of this webinar that will be also published in the ICE channels. And so who wants to see it, then afterwards can join it.
Yeah.
And so
Thank you,
thanks again, Paula.
Tiziano. Thank you, Roldan, for supporting.
Okay, so hope to see you soon in these channels and at the ICE community. Thanks.
Thanks.